If you're thinking of starting a small business, you have come to the right place. But first, let me clarify, this is not a video about how to make money fast or even how to make a shitload of money. This is a video about how to grow a sustainable small business that brings you joy and how to do it without any startup money. For a little bit of context, my name is Kirsten, and 2 years ago, I started a YouTube channel where I process grief and healing. My dream is to one day get monetized on YouTube, and while waiting for that to become a reality, I decided to start my own business 6 months ago just to cover living expenses right now, and eventually maybe even work as a supplementary stream of income once I get monetized. Running my own business the last 6 months has truly been such a fulfilling experience. And I've been pleasantly surprised that I've been able to keep my business expenses so low. So I wanted to make this video for anybody else who wants to start a business but doesn't have the startup capital yet, just in case what's worked for me works for you too. I'm going to divide this video into 3 sections: the business idea, the business plan, and the business support. Also, when I posted an Instagram poll about what you wanted to hear in this video, you voted for my business practices and also how to live with financial uncertainty. So I'll be touching on both of those throughout this video: the whys and hows of my business, as well as steps I take preemptively to reduce financial uncertainty, and then also how I respond to inevitable financial uncertainty. Okay, let's get started. So first things first, when deciding what kind of business you want to start, it's important to come up with one that requires no startup capital. Learning to run a business requires a lot of trial and error, and mistakes cost money. So a great way to avoid spending money initially is to reduce our margin of error. Yes, we might be beginners to starting a business, but we don't need to start a business that we know nothing about. I'd recommend focusing on starting a service-based business, featuring a service that you're excellent at and one that you already have the tools for. So for example, over the last decade, my friends have always complimented the food that I make for them, and my kitchen is stocked with all the equipment I would need for a food-based business. Now, if you don't know what you're excellent at, just ask your friends. Based on your lived experience, any education that you've had over the years, and any skill sets you've picked up, there has to be something that you specifically are excellent at. Now, if you don't have a lot of friends to ask, some reflection questions that you can think through are: how do you spend most of your time? What do you do? And I think it's important to focus on things that you do that fill your cup, that bring you joy. Because if you don't have the passion and the excitement, you're going to get sick of your business real quick. When something brings you joy, it also really helps navigate the financial uncertainty. Because at the end of the day, even when money isn't coming in, you're still filling your days with something that you enjoy, and that's not worth nothing. I also find that when I'm enjoying something, there's more space for creativity. And when there's more space for creativity, there's more space for imagination. You're more motivated to brainstorm ways that you can continue doing what you love. Starting a business around our expertise gives us a head start and helps us avoid as many beginner mistakes as possible. Now, it's important to remember, just because you're good at something doesn't mean people are automatically going to pay you for it. And trying to find people to buy your service can cost you time and money. I recommend finding people you know are interested in your service before even starting your business. So I own a tiffin service, and I thought of this idea to start a tiffin service 2 years ago in 2023, but I wasn't confident that it would work out. It was only until some of my friends shared with me that they were really struggling to cook for themselves, and as a way to shower them with love, I would make cooked meals and drop them off at their place. And I kept getting positive feedback from my friends, and some of them asked if I'd ever considered charging people for my cooked meals. Coincidentally, at that time, my mom was talking about how beautiful the tiffin system is back in India, and I thought to myself, how cool would it be if I started my own tiffin service in Toronto? I'm a huge believer in a people-centered approach to business. Offer a service that people need. And if you know that people are going to be interested in your service before you even start, when you do decide to start your business, you already have potential customers lined up, which reduces the pressure of getting sales. Okay, so now that you have your business idea, we can come up with the business plan. I think it's really smart to start with how much money you need and how many services you have capacity for. So for example, I needed around $500 a month for my living expenses, and I had the capacity to offer 8 tiffin services every week. So I needed each tiffin service to cost between $20 to $25 for me to get at least $500 in profit after deducting my business expenses. Now, when starting out, I think it's important to have realistic goals. For example, I didn't expect to offer 8 tiffin services every week during my first month. My goal actually was not about the number of services, but the number of customers. It was 1 new customer every week for the first month. Now, the reason I was less focused on the number of services and more focused on the number of customers is because my primary goal was to grow my customer base. Because the way that I thought about it, more customers meant more potential referrals. I hit this goal by the second week of the first month, which felt amazing. I think it's so important to remember that having attainable goals increases your chance of accomplishing them, which reduces anxiety around the uncertainties of your business's success in the future. Now, there might still be some weeks or months where you don't meet your goals, even if they're realistic. And this might stir up feelings of anxiety around financial uncertainty. In times like these, I think it's really important to channel that energy and redirect it towards brainstorming alternative ways for you to accomplish your goals. For example, there were a few weeks during my first 6 months where I did not get a new customer. And so I decided to apply to become a vendor at a farmer's market where I would have access to new customers and potentially make up for the weeks when my sales were low. Now, if you don't have startup money, it's really important to create a business that allows for profit right from the start. So that way you can slowly build up a startup fund for your business. For me, this looked like quoting my service at a price of which only 30% was used for business expenses. So I made a 60% profit. Out of that 60%, 30% would be taken for my salary, and the other 30% would be put into a fund for my startup capital for future business expenses. If you don't have startup money, you might have to make decisions for your business that won't save you as much money in the long term. So for example, I didn't buy any business ingredients or materials in bulk for the first 6 months of my business. It was only until this month when I started to make a sizable profit that I started to buy ingredients and materials in bulk, and that would cover multiple services at a time. If I had bought all my ingredients and materials in bulk for the past 6 months, would I have saved more money? Yes, but because I didn't have that startup capital, I couldn't afford to do that. Another example of this is I was only able to start expanding my menu in my 3rd or 4th month after opening my tiffin business because that's when I could afford the business expenses required to introduce new services. Whereas I feel like if I had startup capital, I would have been able to have a wider variety of services from the start, which could have attracted more customers, and that might have saved me more money in the long term. When thinking about ways we can save money, I think it's important to recognize time as a valuable resource and in some ways a substitute for money. To keep my business expenses low, I shop for ingredients for my tiffin service at multiple stores every month, and sometimes even every week. This takes a few more hours than it would if I was just to shop at one store, but it ensures that I keep my business expenses low, which increases my profit margin. Now, this doesn't always amount to spending more time when you have less money. It's more about recognizing the value of your time. For example, I bake and cook my tiffins the morning of pickup. This is to ensure freshness, but it's also to ensure that the time and energy I spend baking and cooking doesn't go to waste. I remember the third week after I started my business, there was a snowstorm in Toronto, and I had 5 tiffins scheduled for pickup that day. Now, if I had prepared my tiffins the day before, I would not have realized that those pickups would not be possible, and all of that time and money would have gone to waste. Now, sometimes that's unavoidable, but I think when considering how we want to spend our time, it's important to determine all factors before deciding what is the best use of our time. When creating a business plan, it's important to be clear on what's important to you. Like, I quit my 9 to 5 2 years ago because I didn't feel like I had enough space to prioritize my well-being. So when pursuing a career on YouTube and starting my own business, I knew that I wanted rest and care to be a part of my business model. One question that I'm always thinking through is, how can I cultivate a work ethic that centers my personhood? This can look like working smart and making space for rest, or finding ways to bring joy into mundane tasks, or pursuing avenues that excite me, that I'm passionate about, or even differentiating between negotiable and non-negotiable deadlines. Repeat your priorities back to yourself every day like a mantra, so that you always consider them, so that you never lose sight of them, so that on the days when you doubt your business's success, you can ground yourself in the reality that you are prioritizing what's most important to you. And that in itself is a win. Okay, so we have our business idea and we have our business plan and we've kickstarted our business. And now we have to focus on maintaining that momentum so that our business can sustain itself. It's time to create a support system, if you will, for our business so that we can increase our chances of financial stability and certainty. First things first, we can support ourselves by celebrating every win, no matter how little, recognizing that every step brings us closer to financial stability. One of the perks of having a small business is having the capacity to value every customer and to honor every order, to recognize the positive impact that each and every one of them has on our life. We can also seek support from our family and friends. We can make a list of all the people we know and all the skill sets of theirs that we could use. And we can ask them if they're willing to volunteer their time to help get our business off the ground. And in return, we can help them build their experience and potentially their portfolio if that's what they're seeking. For example, getting a friend to design your website for your business. You can also take advantage of your social connections and use them to promote your business via word of mouth. For example, whenever I go to a party, if guests are contributing food, I usually will pick something off my tiffin service menu to prepare for the guests and use the party as an opportunity to subtly promote my business. Because if my family and friends enjoy what I made, they're more likely to refer my service to someone that they know who could use it. We can also seek support from our current customer base. I really believe that one of the best ways to build a positive relationship with your customers is to ensure the quality of your product or service. Now, I know it's tempting to cut corners, especially if that means saving money. But if cutting corners impacts the quality of your product, it's not worth the risk. Your customers will be able to tell if your product is not as good as it used to be. And that might break the trust that you built with that customer and potentially cost you that customer. Alongside maintaining the quality of your product is improving the quality of your product. Ask your customers for feedback and listen to their feedback. And if necessary, make changes accordingly. Assure your customers that you value their feedback and that it's important to you to create a product that your customers are satisfied with. And finally, we can seek support from new customers. Ask yourself, how can I expand my customer base? Who is my target audience and where can I find them? What spaces can I insert myself into to meet new customers that I usually wouldn't have access to? For example, I started promoting my tiffin service at community centers in case they were interested in a caterer for their youth programs. Whenever I'm recipe testing a new menu item, I even save some samples and then drop off these free samples in spaces where I could potentially gain new customers. This helps them build trust in my products, especially if this is their first encounter with my service. And this brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for hanging with me as I share insight from my 6-month business journey, the whys, the hows, and the preventing and responding to financial uncertainty, which is an inevitable part of owning your own business. I hope my story resonated with you and that it inspires you to start your own business, even if you might not have the startup capital that you thought you needed. In case you're interested, I'm also going to drop some videos where I document my YouTube journey, so feel free to check those out. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!